So thank you all for coming out this morning. My name's Ed Risk, and I'm the Director of Transportation here in San Francisco. And happy to see you all here because we're going to need everybody's help in what we're talking about here today. Where I'd start is that San Francisco, we're very lucky. San Francisco is a great city. It's one of the most walkable cities in the country, if not the world. It's a big part of what makes San Francisco a great place for those of us who live here. It's part of what attracts people to want to come here. It's a great city to walk around. It's a great city to be in. However, we have a problem, and the problem is that people are getting killed and seriously injured in our streets, and that shouldn't be happening. It's unacceptable that people are getting killed and seriously injured in our streets. It's tragic that it's happening, not just for the families, especially for the families of those to whom it happens, but really for our whole city. It's tragic that it's happening. But the good news is that it's preventable, that every one of these deaths, every one of these serious injuries is preventable. And the good news behind that is that we have great leadership in the city, as manifested by the strong and powerful showing of folks behind me that are focused, committed, and dedicated to preventing these serious collisions and fatal collisions so that we get all the great benefit and beauty of our walkable city without having to worry about getting hurt or killed as we walk around our streets. At the top of the pyramid of that leadership is our chief executive, who's made a hallmark of his administration, bringing people together to solve problems. I think what we're going to talk about today is really the epitome of that approach to making San Francisco a better place. So it's my pleasure to welcome up to the mic our Mayor, Ed Lee.
Thank you, Ed, for that introduction. Of course, I would prefer being outside. Somebody said that there might rain, but I would have loved to be drenched by rain. It's good for our city. But I do want to join Ed in thanking all the people behind me, and particularly each member of the Board of Supervisors as well, who've been working with us on the pedestrian safety strategy. I will let you know that not only myself and personal residents and residential leaders of different communities, each of the supervisors during the last few months have given me their personal accounts of their dangerous intersections, the people that were lost or severely injured, and it is becoming personal. And I want to say today that rather than have years where all of us in office are saying that we're sorry for something to happen, we'd rather be saying thank you for yielding, thank you for not running the red lights, thank you for not speeding, because that's always going to be better than saying, I'm sorry. And this is what groups have not only taught us that are advocates in their own right, and they're well-deserving, and they should have a very loud voice in the city, and they are, but we should have very loud ears and very big hands to be able to implement the kinds of programs that will be less about being sorry and more about being thankful. It begins with awareness. You have already heard of the awareness program that Muni and all the other agencies are promoting through advertising, whether it's radio, television, or printed materials on our buses, and we'll get them on our taxis and all the other ride-sharing spaces that we have to make people aware and trilingual ability to make sure that they know that they can keep themselves safer, and that drivers need to be safer, and everybody on the road need to be safer. That awareness campaign cannot work in and of its own, but it will definitely be an awareness campaign. A good part of that, and I'm always thankful to our police department and other enforcement, is an increase of some 12% in our traffic division of the police department. I want to thank them because I know there's other valuable time they have as well, but this is, and they recognize it as important, preventing deaths and injuries. And I will say to you this, I've asked the police department that while I do an awareness campaign that says, be nice and look twice, I'm asking my officers to not be so nice. Enforcement is about that discipline that we have to have in people's behavior. They're not going to be so nice when they see persons not yielding, when red lights are run, and when speeding occurs. I'm asking our traffic officers not to be so nice, because that enforcement should have effects on people's behavior, and we mean it. And again, because Supervisor Avalos, Supervisor Chu, and all the other supervisors, we do not want to be saying we're sorry. And the statistics will bear that out. Last year was the highest number of fatalities that our cities has experienced in traffic collisions, and we need to do more about it. So we're unveiling that and reminding everybody that traffic enforcement will be there, and we're going to increase it, particularly at those sites throughout the city that we know and have great data evidence to back it up. And then the pedestrian strategy group that is represented behind me by everybody, and more people and more advocacy groups have also taken a look at the data throughout the city, data that has improved more and more, and built that upon strategies that are reflected on what other cities are doing, but what our own city can do. And we've come up with a priority list of areas of the city where it literally represents some 6% of all of the street grids, but they end up being sites where over 60% of the fatalities and injuries occur in our city. And we need to focus on those right now and right away. And so even though we have some $50 million embedded in the bond that we plan to present to the voters in November, the Transportation Infrastructure Bond, we have come up with an immediate $17 million to promote what we call Walk First program in San Francisco. And it's literally taking the highest percentage of injury intersections and streets and corners and putting some designs of safety ideas that we have in play. For example, I'll just give you a few examples that represent across the city where those locations are and what we're doing about it. Sutter Street, throughout Sutter Street, sidewalk bulb outs, signal timing changes, and continental crosswalks along Sutter Street. Bulb outs and sidewalks at 9th and Folsom Street. Improved crosswalk reopenings at Pine and Stockton. Bus bulb outs and roadway striping changes at Mission and Silver across the town. New traffic signals at intersections throughout the city, including Geary at Palm, 6th and Minna, 16th Street at Cap, and Ewing and Masonic. And specifically at my requests, but I wasn't the first one to think of this. There are many advocates that have brought this to my attention. We're going to put that traffic signal at Sunset and Yorba this year, before this year ends. We're going to hustle that because of all the people that cross that very dangerous street, and the speeding there is unacceptable. And while we're waiting for that traffic signal to be placed in, I've specifically asked our chief, and he's responded with a dedicated officer on that to catch anybody that's going to be speeding through that intersection while people are trying to walk. So we're going to make the city safer. This is our mandate. We have to do it. We want to do it. And again, we are tired of saying we're sorry. We're not going to do that anymore in this city. We're putting money, serious money behind this. I know that the group has identified over $274 million of work that we need to be doing. And this $50 million that we're identifying for November begins with this first $17 million that we have now, that we've already identified by various sources. And I want to thank the County Transportation Agency, all the other, using Prop K, and all the other agencies for getting this first $17 million started ahead in the very touchy areas of the city that we want to have. It's more than just about commitment. We stood here months before and always said that we cared about the city's safety, but we have to actually act on them, whether it's awareness, whether it's a higher level of enforcement, or whether it's redesigning and putting things into those streets that make sure from a physical standpoint a better and more efficient and more safer areas for people to walk and ride. And we want to continue, as Ed said, promoting the city as the most walkable city anywhere in the country. We cannot honestly do that unless we do all these other things that support that very fine goal of being the most walkable city. And so I say to you today that we're acting on this, and I appreciate all the people behind me and their efforts, and they're going to continue saying it's not enough and it's not fast enough, and we're going to listen to that. We're going to continue hustling our efforts to place physical changes out there, but most importantly, the thing I want to come out of this is everybody who drives in the city, just slow down. You've got to slow down. All of the construction trucks that we have with a great indication of our economic recovery have got to slow down. All the people that use emergency vehicles have got to be absolutely sure that what they're doing is the safest and most efficient way to produce that service. We're a very compacted city. We need to slow everybody down. We need to promote people looking both ways before they cross the street, taking that extra precaution for themselves and for their families and for everybody else. And we're going to be doing all of that through education, through enforcement, and through good, solid investments that are based upon the data that we're given and around a lot of historic comments that have been made. I think this is very comprehensive, and we're going to keep this pedestrian safety group working with us and all the advocates working with us and demonstrating to them that we can respond very quickly and efficiently. And again, I thank our police, our fire, and all the other emergency departments for helping us get to this point, and for the departments that will implementing these things, whether it's the traffic division of MTA or Public Works working with all the others, or PUC or DBI, all the other agencies working together. We'll honor all of their efforts when we get all these changes up and going immediately. You'll see these improvements being done this year. There should be more to come, and our police department is thinking of other ways in which we can use technology to improve it, but those demonstration ideas will come forth as we get the appropriate funding and the ideas together to even make technology work for us in an even more broader and deeper way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks for your leadership on this issue, your office's leadership of the Pedestrian Safety Task Force, the development of the pedestrian strategy from which Walk First, the initiative that we're rolling out today, was birthed. We wouldn't be able to do without leadership from the mayor's office, because it takes all the city family, all of the city community working together to make this happen. The other part of that equation is our leadership from the legislative branch of government. And I want to start by bringing up the leader of that branch, the president of the Board of Supervisors, who in his role as president, in his role as representative from the board on the city's capital planning committee, and also in his role as someone who represents the districts that have some of the biggest challenges in terms of pedestrian safety. Please join me in welcoming Board President David Chu.
Good morning. I want to thank all of the folks, the men and women who are standing behind us, for walking together in this important announcement. I want to thank our mayor for his leadership. I want to thank all the agencies from the SFMTA to the police department, the fire department, DPW, planning. And in particular, I want to thank our advocacy organizations, Walk SF, the Bike Coalition, and other community advocates for moving us forward. I'm really proud of the fact that our Board of Supervisors, that we are leading together, that we are united. I want to thank Supervisors Yee and Kim and Avalos for their leadership on what will be an innovative and groundbreaking set of innovations as how we get to better safety. In my first term, in my first few years, I participated in a number of meetings with many of the agencies standing behind me. And I think it's fair to say that many of us were frustrated at the fact that it was often difficult to get on the same page. It was difficult for us to hold ourselves accountable. It's easy to say that we support pedestrian safety, but it's hard to focus. And sometimes it takes a crisis to focus, and that crisis has been what has happened over the last year. 21 deaths, 3 major incidents a day. These victims are our mothers and our fathers. They're our daughters and our sons. They're our brothers and our sisters, and this is unacceptable. And this is why we know that we have to come together with this crisis to create a real opportunity to move things forward. And let me say this about Vision Zero. If Sweden can do it, so can San Francisco. Walk First is an impressive, a data-driven and innovative program that we're announcing today that will make sure that we get this done. And I want to thank all of the city agencies that really came together to put aside our differences and, again, to walk together. And let me also say, we have to, in the coming months, do this again, come together, put aside whatever narrow differences we may have on this issue, and come and unite around measures on our November ballot so that we can properly fund transit improvements and pedestrian safety improvements for the next decade. I want to again thank you all for being here. Look forward to this work we're going to do together.
Thank you, President Chu. Another one of our partners in this endeavor is the County Transportation Authority, and I want to acknowledge the Executive Director, Tilly Chang, who really should be standing up here as really one of the leaders in the city that's going to help us solve this problem. The Transportation Authority is governed by an 11-member commission that happens to be the same people who sit as our Board of Supervisors, and they are led by a great advocate for transportation generally, for equity in transportation, and particularly for safety in transportation. Please welcome the Chairman of the Transportation Authority Commission, John Avalos.
Thank you, Ed. I'm really glad to be sharing this room with our city departments and the mayor, the president of the Board of Supervisors, my colleagues, especially who have been taking ginormous steps on our effort around the pedestrian safety crisis, Supervisors Norman Yee and Jane Kim. In particular, I want to emphasize just where we're at as a city. We are at a place where we have to do new ways of doing business when it comes to pedestrian safety. We have been, as President Chu discussed, we have been held back by dysfunction, not being able to work collaboratively together. That can no longer happen. And I have really dedicated the staff of the Transportation Authority to work closely with the MTA, with the Department of Public Works, the Department of Public Health, the Controller's Office to make sure that we are doing everything we can to do new ways of doing business. We've established a new committee in the Transportation Authority, a Vision Zero committee, which will be looking at how we can expedite our 24 projects in 24 months to make sure that we're putting infrastructure in place where it's needed to protect pedestrians all over the city. But we're also going to be focused in particular on the neighborhoods that are mostly impacted. I can't say enough how much the Tenderloin and South of Market are neighborhoods that need great help and great support to make their streets safer for pedestrians. Mayor Lee, in his State of the Union address, committed new resources from the city for pedestrian safety, and the Transportation Authority will be committing up to $10 million to improve the outcomes for pedestrians in San Francisco. I represent a neighborhoods of San Francisco, south of 280, that not a week goes by where I don't hear from several people asking for traffic calming. And so looking at Walk First will provide the real data necessary for us to hone in where we need to actually put the improvements in place and rapidly do so. I want to thank the Controller's Office for their work bringing forward the planning for Walk First. I think it's really significant that behind the scenes, the Controller's Office has been working closely with city departments to come forward with the strategy. And now it's time for us to work together collaboratively, as we've never done before, to really protect pedestrians and San Franciscans all over the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Avalos. As I think you've heard, one of the themes here is that this is something that we're all unified behind. And I want to acknowledge part of the leaders of that unity, the woman who represents the district that has the most significant challenges with regard to pedestrian safety, and the woman who's raised the bar for all of us with Vision Zero, Supervisor Jane Kim. Please give her a hand. And from the other end of the city, someone who from day one in office has really made pedestrian safety a key legislative and policy issue for him, stemming in part from the fact that he himself was victim of a pedestrian collision. And someone who's brought a lot of leadership to this issue just earlier, I think it was this week, and restarting the student school crossing guard program. Like to recognize from District 7 Supervisor Norman Yee. It's not just the folks inside this building or inside the city family who are going to be part of what makes us successful here. It's stakeholders from the outside, it's advocates from the outside, people who are helping make sure that we understand the problems, where they are, what the issues are, and who are pushing us to do better and to move faster. And the leading voice we have in that regard comes from Walk SF, a small but powerful and energetic organization who is continually pushing us to do better and to help make San Francisco the great place for walking that we all know it can be. So please join me in welcoming Executive Director of Walk SF, Nicole Schneider.
Thank you all. I'm so honored to be here standing beside our mayor, who is committed to pedestrian safety, our board of supervisors who have shown their leadership to pedestrian safety, the MTA, the police department, the Office of the Controller, the Department of Public Health, and many more. And this is really a dream for pedestrian advocates to be able to stand here beside so many city leaders who are supportive of pedestrian safety. And first of all, this is a sea change, I think, and I just really want to draw attention to the city staff that are also standing here who did so much of the legwork. So I just want to give them a really big round of applause. Walk First is a way for us to get to Vision Zero traffic fatalities in 10 years. It's a data-driven method to fix our most dangerous streets. As others have said, our most dangerous streets are only 6% of our street network, but they're responsible for 60% of all injuries and fatalities. We can strategically focus our money towards those most dangerous streets. Walk First also helps to address those streets through the quick, effective, and low-cost treatments. And we're really excited to see more of those following Supervisor Kim's lead and the MTA's lead on 6th Street and Market. Too many lives have been lost on our dangerous streets, and I am really excited to hear the mayor talk about not saying sorry anymore and really doing what we can to prevent those injuries, because I think that's the crux of what we're here to talk about today. Vision Zero and Walk First are about real people like you and me and Sophia Liu's 4-year-old brother who didn't realize that his big sister wasn't going to come home, or Jakaya Stevens, who thankfully survived but is dealing with a broken career and broken bones. Vision Zero is also about coexisting in a complicated, busy, urban environment in a fast-paced world. But we know that we can do this because we're San Francisco, and we can be neighborly, and we can come together, and we are a great city, and we're looking forward to showing the world, showing Sweden, that we can also achieve Vision Zero. So just want to, again, reiterate our thanks as Walk SF and our members as we move forward with the city, with our community partners to advocate for more funding, to ensure that these Walk First projects hit the ground, and to make walking safer and encourage more people to walk in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole, for your leadership and your impatience with us in this regard. It's welcome, and it continues to push us to do better. But another thing that we're lucky about in the city is that I think when it comes to public safety, we have two of the finest chiefs in the country who are helping to make our city safer. I want to thank Chief Johann Hayes White and the fire department for their role with regard to pedestrian safety. They're often at the tail end as the first responders. We want to reduce that workload for them as part of this process, but I want to thank her and her staff for their efforts. And our real partner, when we think of the 3 E's of safety, there's engineering and education, and at the SFMTA, we play a lead role in that. But we play a supporting role in the third one, and that's enforcement, and the mayor made some reference to this. There's a lot we can do with the data that we have. There's a lot we can do to design our streets better. There's a lot that we can do to try to make people more aware. As the mayor said, everybody needs to slow down. Everybody needs to be alert, not paying attention to electronic devices or anything else when you're out moving around in the streets. But we need to make sure that people are following the laws. That's one of the most important things we can do to make the streets safer for all road users, particularly pedestrians. The chief behind that effort has been helped by leadership from the mayor and the Board of Supervisors that have added police academies so that he can staff back up to the strength of the police department that we need. But the leadership to deploy those resources, as the mayor made reference, to make sure that we are enforcing the laws and being strategic about how we do so is being done very well by our great Chief of Police. Please welcome Greg Sir.
I too want to echo the support that I get from all the people behind me. Our mayor, his #1 priority is that this city is safest. And I get charged with that, and there's no way we can get that done without the help of the support of the Board of Supervisors, our other partners, certainly Ed Reskin on this particular issue and MTA, and certainly our community partners, Walk SF and the Bicycle Coalition. When I became chief, one of the big issues was violent crime in San Francisco, and the mayor and I spoke a lot about that early on. In February, we had only the second time in the last 50 years where there wasn't a homicide at all in the entire city of San Francisco, and yet some pedestrian was killed on the streets. In fact, year to date, we've had more people killed on the streets of San Francisco in vehicle collisions than we have by homicide. It is a problem. We intend to attack this in the exact same way that we did in trying to get a handle on gun violence and violent crime in San Francisco, and that's through smart strategy, use of technology for deployment and redeployment of a finite amount of resources, and certainly enlisting the help of our community. And we've been successful so far in violent crime, and we hope to hold the line there. But I think that right now, by our focus on the 5 most dangerous intersections in each district, and by our focusing on the 5 most common collision factors and using our data warehouse for real-time deployment and redeployment of resources, we can get a handle on this thing, at least for the enforcement piece of what Mr. Reskin talked about. But as far as education and engineering, we're going to need the community's help. We're going to need partnership. We were all raised to look both ways before we cross the street. Now I would ask you to look both ways and make eye contact with the driver nearest your intersection before you venture across the street. We are a crowded city. Our population's over 800,000 and growing. We have nearly twice as many bicycles in the city as we did only 6 or 7 years ago. We have more construction in San Francisco than any other city in the country, which narrows our roadways. And at the same time, everybody can't wait 60 seconds longer to be on their cell phone. So distraction is at a premium. We are at a crisis level in San Francisco where we exceed violent crime, serious injuries and deaths by those that are happening on the roadways. And we can do this. We can do this together. We can do it using technology. We can follow the lead of the people behind us. But we can't get it done unless we do it together. So as Chief of Police, I just ask for everybody, slow down, pay attention, and we'll have a safer city. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. I think a couple themes we've heard is one, that there's a crisis that requires some urgency and requires us all to work together. But I think what you've also heard is this is achievable. This is a solvable problem and something that San Francisco can, I think, quickly establish itself as a leader in doing. Just to close out, one of the ways that we're doing this to help focus our enforcement resources, to help focus our education efforts, and particularly to help focus our design efforts, our engineering efforts. You keep hearing the phrase data-driven. We're really using data in a way that I think is a model of planning for the city in terms of how we use our resources as strategically and effectively as possible. So who is driving that data? I want to specifically acknowledge Ben Rosenfield and his staff at the Controller's Office. Barbara Garcia and her staff at the Department of Public Health, Tilly Chang, her staff at the County Transportation Authority, John Ram and his staff in the Planning Department. We've had a lot of the smartest minds, and as well as, last but certainly not least, the staff of the MTA, particularly the Sustainable Street staff, many of whom are here. A lot of the brightest minds in the city working together to create, to analyze this data that will help us use our resources, enforcement, education, or engineering, as strategically and effectively as possible. And then when it comes time to putting things in the ground, Department of Public Works, led by Mohammed Nuru, City Engineer Fuad Suisse, Mayor's Office on Disability, Carla Johnson, working together with our staff, Tom Huey from the Department of Building Inspection. We're all working together to put this stuff in the ground. And finally, at the SFMTA, we are led by a board of directors that are appointed by the mayor. They have identified safety as the #1 priority in our strategic plan that's governing all the work we do. So I want to acknowledge the vice chair of the board of directors, Cheryl Brinkman, for her role, one of the lead and strongest voices on our board of directors, advocating for pedestrian safety, for bike safety, for safety of all road users. With all the folks standing behind me, with all the great staff work, the advocates, and everybody in San Francisco taking on the challenge and the responsibility to slow down and to be aware and to get around the city safely, we can make San Francisco the great place in terms of pedestrian safety that it is in so many other realms. So thank you all for coming. Thanks to the folks behind me. Look forward to making great progress quickly together. Thank you.